Failure is not the end of your story, it is the part where the lesson begins. Every mistake you've made, every plan that collapsed, every moment you wished you could undo was not meant to destroy you. It was meant to teach you something you could not learn any other way. Most people try to erase failure from their lives. They hide from it, deny it, or let it define them. But the strongest people do the opposite. They study it. They listen to what failure is trying to show them, because failure doesn't come to punish you, it comes to sharpen you. This audiobook is about changing your relationship with failure, about turning pain into understanding, mistakes into wisdom, and setbacks into strength. Because once you stop fearing failure, you start learning at a level success alone could never teach you. Setbacks into strength. Because once you stop fearing failure, you start learning at a level success alone could never teach you. Chapter 1. Why Failure Hurts So Deeply. Failure hurts so deeply because it strikes the ego before it reaches the mind. Philosophy teaches that pain intensifies when identity is threatened. When something fails, it does not feel like an event went wrong. It feels like you went wrong. The mind quickly turns an outcome into a verdict. Dreams collapse, and with them, the image you held of who you were becoming. This is why failure feels personal. It shakes the story you were telling yourself about your competence, your future, and your worth. The pain is not only about loss, it is about disorientation. You no longer know where you stand. Certainty vanishes, and the unknown opens beneath your feet. That moment of inner instability is what hurts the most. It is not the mistake itself, but the collapse of meaning around it. Failure also hurts deeply because it exposes vulnerability we try hard to hide. Philosophy reminds us that humans crave control not over life, but over how they are perceived. Failure removes that control instantly. Suddenly, weaknesses become visible, plans are questioned, and confidence feels fragile. You may feel watched, judged, or silently measured by others. Even when no one says anything, the imagination fills the silence with criticism. This imagined judgment amplifies pain. The wound deepens because it feels public, even when it is private. Failure pulls you out of the illusion of mastery and places you back into uncertainty. Uncertainty feels unsafe to the ego. The ego responds with shame, defensiveness, or withdrawal. These reactions intensify suffering. The hurt comes not from falling, but from feeling exposed while falling. Another reason failure cuts so deeply is because of attachment to outcomes. Philosophy teaches that attachment magnifies suffering. When you attach your sense of value to a specific result, failure feels like loss of self. The mind says, "If this doesn't work, I am nothing." This belief is rarely conscious, but it operates powerfully. The more meaning you invest in a single outcome, the more pain you feel when it collapses. Failure then feels disproportionate to the event. A missed opportunity feels like a ruined life. A mistake feels irreversible. This exaggeration is not weakness. It is attachment expressing itself. When attachment loosens, pain becomes information instead of identity damage. But before that awareness, failure feels devastating because it threatens everything you tied yourself to. Failure also hurts because it disrupts hope. Philosophy describes hope as a forward-facing force. It pulls the mind into tomorrow. When failure happens, that forward momentum stops abruptly. The future you imagined dissolves, leaving a void. This void feels heavy and silent. In that silence, doubt grows loud. You question your abilities, your decisions, and even your desires. Hope collapses into self-criticism. The pain is not only about what failed, but about the loss of direction. Direction gives life meaning. Without it, the mind feels lost. Failure temporarily removes your map. That loss of orientation creates emotional pain that feels deeper than disappointment. It feels existential. Failure hurts deeply because society teaches us to equate success with worth. Philosophy warns against borrowed values, yet most people absorb them unconsciously. From early life, praise follows achievement, and attention fades with mistakes. This conditioning teaches the mind that failure equals unworthiness. Even when you intellectually reject this idea, the emotional imprint remains. When you fail, the old conditioning activates automatically. You may feel small, embarrassed, or ashamed without knowing why. These feelings are not proof of truth, they are echoes of learned judgment. The pain feels deep because it has roots in early belief systems. Failure touches layers formed long before conscious thought. Another reason failure hurts is because it confronts you with limitation. Philosophy teaches that humans resist finitude. We want to believe effort guarantees outcome. Failure contradicts this belief. It shows that control is partial, not absolute. This realization can feel humiliating. You did everything you knew how to do, and it still didn't work. The mind rebels against this reality. It searches for someone to blame, often turning inward. The pain intensifies because failure reveals that effort does not equal certainty. Accepting this truth is difficult, but it is also where wisdom begins. Failure also hurts because it activates comparison. Philosophy notes that comparison is the thief of peace. When you fail, the mind immediately looks outward. Others seem to be progressing while you are stuck. Their success becomes a mirror, reflecting your perceived inadequacy. This comparison distorts reality. You see only others' highlights and your own behind-the-scenes struggles. The pain grows because you feel left behind. Failure isolates by making you feel uniquely defective, even though failure is universal. The sense of isolation deepens emotional suffering. Another layer of pain comes from regret. Philosophy distinguishes reflection from regret. Regret is backward-looking self-punishment. After failure, the mind replays choices obsessively. If only I had done this. If only I had known that. These loops trap attention in the past. Regret keeps pain alive by refusing closure. Instead of learning, the mind punishes. This punishment feels like pain with no purpose. It drains energy and clarity. Failure hurts more when regret replaces reflection. The lesson is buried under self-attack. Failure hurts deeply because it threatens identity continuity. Philosophy teaches that humans need a coherent story of self. Failure interrupts that story. The chapter you were writing ends abruptly. You don't know how the next chapter begins. This gap creates anxiety. Anxiety intensifies pain. The mind hates unfinished narratives. It wants resolution. Failure delays resolution. Until meaning is restored, the pain lingers. This is why understanding failure matters. Meaning heals what outcome could not. Another reason failure hurts is fear of permanence. Philosophy observes that pain increases when we believe it will last forever. After failure, the mind predicts repetition. This will always happen. I will never recover. These thoughts transform a single event into a life sentence. The pain deepens because hope feels unreachable. But this belief is a distortion. Failure feels permanent only when perspective is narrow. With time and distance, meaning changes. But in the moment, the pain feels endless. Failure also hurts because it demands humility. Philosophy teaches that humility is growth's gateway, but the ego resists it. Failure forces you to confront gaps in knowledge, skill, or awareness. This confrontation feels uncomfortable. The ego interprets it as weakness, but humility is not humiliation. The pain comes from resistance to learning. When humility is embraced, failure softens. When resisted, It wounds deeply. Another source of pain is unmet expectations from others. Philosophy notes that external expectations often shape internal pressure. You may feel you disappointed family, mentors, or even an imagined audience. This perceived disappointment becomes heavy. You carry not only your own pain, but the weight of assumed judgment. Failure hurts more when it feels shared. Even when others are forgiving, the internal pressure remains. The mind becomes its own harsh observer. Failure hurts deeply because it exposes emotional investment. Philosophy teaches that pain reveals where you cared. The depth of pain reflects the depth of meaning. This is not weakness. It is evidence of engagement with life. People who feel deeply are often those who dared greatly. Failure hurts them more because they risked more. This pain is not a sign to withdraw, but a sign that growth was attempted sincerely. Another layer of pain comes from uncertainty about recovery. Philosophy teaches that pain is magnified by not knowing what comes next. After failure, the path forward is unclear. Uncertainty feels threatening. The mind craves structure. Without it, anxiety grows. This anxiety merges with pain, creating a heavy emotional state. The pain eases when direction returns, even slowly. Direction restores hope. Failure also hurts because it removes illusion. Philosophy teaches that illusion can be comforting. Success often reinforces illusion, the illusion of control, certainty, and predictability. Failure strips these away. The rawness of reality is uncomfortable at first, but this stripping is also preparation. Pain is the cost of clarity. Clarity eventually leads to strength. Ultimately, failure hurts so deeply because it forces growth before comfort. Philosophy teaches that growth is rarely gentle at first. The pain is not punishment, it is transformation in progress. When you understand why failure hurts, you stop fighting the pain and start listening to it. And in that listening, the hurt slowly turns into insight. Chapter 2: The difference between failing and being a failure. Failing and being a failure are not the same thing, yet the mind often merges them instantly. Philosophy teaches that events and identity must never be confused, but the ego struggles with this separation. When something fails, the mind rushes to create meaning. Instead of seeing failure as information, it turns it into a label. I failed quietly becomes I am a failure. This shift is subtle but devastating. One is an experience, the other is a verdict. Experiences pass, verdicts linger. The pain intensifies not because of what happened, but because of what you believe it says about who you are. Understanding this distinction is the first step toward freedom. When you separate the event from the self, failure loses its power to define you. Failing is something you do. Being a failure is something you believe. Philosophy emphasizes that belief shapes reality more than circumstance. When you believe you are a failure, every mistake becomes evidence. Every setback feels confirming. The mind begins collecting proof to support a story that was never true. This story narrows perception. You stop seeing possibilities and start seeing patterns of defeat. But failing is neutral by nature. It carries no identity. It simply reveals that an attempt did not produce the desired result. That is all. The suffering begins when interpretation replaces observation. When you learn to observe failure without attaching it to self-worth, the emotional weight lightens, clarity returns. Growth becomes possible again. Being a failure is an identity formed through repetition of unexamined thoughts. Philosophy teaches that identity is constructed, not discovered. No one is born believing they are a failure. That belief develops through comparison, criticism, and unresolved disappointment. Each failure becomes a brick added to an internal structure of self-judgment. Over time, this structure feels solid and permanent. but it is built entirely from interpretation. Failing does not create this identity, ignoring reflection does. When reflection is absent, pain turns inward. When reflection is present, pain turns into learning. The difference determines whether failure becomes wisdom or self-condemnation. Failing exists in time. Being a failure claims permanence. Philosophy warns that permanence is often an illusion created by emotion. After a setback, the mind predicts the future based on present pain. This always happens. It will never change. These statements transform a temporary event into a permanent identity. This is where suffering deepens. The truth is that failing happens in moments. Being a failure exists only in thought. When you recognize this, you begin reclaiming perspective. Perspective restores movement. Movement dissolves stagnation. The self loosens from the label, and space opens for growth. Failing often points to effort, not inadequacy. Philosophy teaches that failure is evidence of engagement. You cannot fail at what you never attempt. Being a failure, however, implies passivity and resignation. It suggests a fixed state, not a dynamic process. This belief discourages effort. Why try if identity is already decided? This is how the mind traps itself. Understanding that failing is a sign of trying reframes the experience. It turns shame into proof of courage. Courage is incompatible with the idea of being a failure. The two cannot coexist once examined honestly. Another key difference lies in responsibility. Philosophy distinguishes responsibility from blame. Failing invites responsibility to learn, adjust, and grow. Being a failure invites blame toward the self. Blame paralyzes. Responsibility empowers. When you see failure as feedback, responsibility feels constructive. When you see failure as identity, responsibility feels pointless. Growth stops. Recognizing this difference changes how you respond to setbacks. One response builds strength, the other erodes it. Failing is external. Being a failure is internalized. Philosophy notes that external events lose power when not internalized. When you internalize failure, it becomes part of your self-image. This self-image then filters experience. You interpret neutral events as confirmation of inadequacy. This distortion keeps pain alive long after the failure has passed. Learning to externalize failure to see it as something that happened, not something you are, restores balance. Balance allows emotional recovery. Recovery allows insight. Insight leads to progress. Failing also allows comparison with reality. Being a failure traps you in comparison with others. Philosophy warns that comparison thrives on identity labels. When you believe you are a failure, you measure yourself against others' successes. Their progress becomes your punishment. Failing, on the other hand, allows comparison with your own past attempts. This internal comparison is healthy. It measures learning, not worth. One comparison motivates, the other humiliates. Knowing which one you are engaging in determines whether failure strengthens or destroys you. Being a failure suggests finality. Failing suggests process. Philosophy teaches that life is process, not conclusion. As long as you are alive, you are unfinished. Failing is part of that unfolding. Being a failure denies it. It closes the book prematurely. When you see yourself as a work in progress, failure becomes a chapter, not the title. This perspective restores hope. Hope changes behavior. Behavior changes outcomes. The cycle reverses. Failing often reveals strategy gaps, not character flaws. Philosophy encourages discernment over judgment. When something fails, it asks questions. What didn't work? What was missing? What can be refined? Being a failure answers with accusation instead of inquiry. Accusation halts learning. Inquiry invites growth. The quality of your questions after failure determines your trajectory. Strong people ask better questions. Weak narratives ask condemning ones. Choosing inquiry over accusation dissolves the failure identity. Failing also strengthens humility. Being a failure breeds shame. Philosophy distinguishes humility as openness to learning, while shame closes the self. Humility says, "I have more to learn." Shame says, "I am not enough." One expands awareness, the other shrinks it. Failure invites humility naturally. Shame enters only when identity is attacked. Learning to accept humility without collapsing into shame is a powerful skill. It allows growth without self-destruction. Another difference lies in language. Philosophy teaches that language shapes experience. Saying, "I failed," is accurate and temporary. Saying, "I am a failure," is absolute and misleading. Words matter. Repeating identity-based language reinforces belief. Changing language changes perception. Perception changes emotion. Emotion changes behavior. This is not denial, it is precision. Precision protects the self from unnecessary suffering. Failing does not erase previous success. Being a failure rewrites history. Philosophy notes that identity labels distort memory. When you believe you are a failure, you minimize past achievements and exaggerate mistakes. The mind selectively remembers to maintain coherence. This coherence is false. Failing exists alongside success, not in opposition to it. Remembering this restores fairness in self-evaluation. Fairness calms the mind. Calm allows perspective. Failing invites resilience. Being a failure invites withdrawal. Philosophy teaches that resilience grows through challenge. When you accept failure as part of learning, you remain engaged. When you accept failure as identity, you retreat. Retreat feels safe, but limits life. Engagement feels risky, but expands it. Understanding this difference helps you choose growth over comfort. Strength develops only through engagement. Finally, the difference between failing and being a failure is the difference between truth and story. Philosophy teaches that truth is neutral, story is emotional, failure is truth. Being a failure is a story told repeatedly until believed. You can rewrite the story by changing how you interpret failure. When you do, failure stops hurting your identity and starts shaping your wisdom. And wisdom is something no failure can ever take from you. Chapter 3. How mistakes reveal the truth about you. Mistakes reveal the truth about you because they remove performance and expose response. Philosophy teaches that who you are is not shown in moments of control, but in moments when control slips. When things go wrong, masks fall away. Plans collapse, expectations break, and instinct takes over. In that instant, you meet yourself without filters. Do you become defensive or reflective? Do you blame or inquire? Do you collapse inward or stay present? These reactions are not random. They are patterns built over time. Mistakes do not create these patterns, they reveal them. This is why mistakes feel uncomfortable. They show you something real before you are ready to explain it away. Truth often arrives without invitation. Mistakes are one of its messengers. Mistakes reveal how you relate to responsibility. Philosophy distinguishes between owning and punishing. When a mistake happens, some people immediately take responsibility without self-attack. Others collapse into shame or project blame outward. This difference reveals emotional maturity. Responsibility asks, "What can I learn?" Punishment asks, "What is wrong with me?" One leads to growth. The other leads to stagnation. Mistakes illuminate whether you see yourself as capable of learning or inherently flawed. That belief quietly shapes every future decision. The mistake itself is small compared to the mindset it uncovers. Mistakes also reveal your relationship with fear. Philosophy teaches that fear shapes perception. When fear dominates, mistakes feel catastrophic. You panic, hide, or overcorrect. When fear is regulated, mistakes feel informative. You slow down and examine. This response reveals how safe you feel within yourself. People who feel internally safe can face mistakes without collapsing. People who rely on external validation feel threatened by them. Mistakes show whether your sense of worth is internal or borrowed. This truth is uncomfortable, but it is necessary for growth. Another truth mistakes reveal is how honest you are with yourself. Philosophy teaches that denial delays wisdom. When a mistake happens, the mind often rushes to justify. Justification protects the ego but blocks learning. Those who can sit with discomfort without explanation access deeper insight. Mistakes reveal whether you prioritize comfort or clarity. Clarity demands honesty. Honesty demands courage. Mistakes test that courage directly. They ask, "Can you look without flinching?" The answer shapes who you become. Mistakes also reveal your attachment to image. Philosophy warns that image is fragile. When your self-worth depends on appearing competent, mistakes feel humiliating. You focus more on how you look than on what you learn. This reveals a life organized around perception rather than substance. Mistakes disrupt image-based identity. They force you to choose between protecting appearance or developing character. Character grows only when image is no longer the priority. Mistakes offer that choice repeatedly. Mistakes reveal how you treat yourself under pressure. Philosophy teaches that self-compassion is not softness, it is stability. When something goes wrong, do you become harsh, impatient, and critical toward yourself? Or do you remain firm but kind? This response reveals your internal leadership. Harsh self-talk weakens resilience. Calm self-guidance strengthens it. Mistakes expose the tone of your inner voice. That voice determines whether setbacks become lessons or wounds. Another truth revealed by mistakes is how flexible your thinking is. Philosophy values adaptability as intelligence. When a mistake occurs, rigid thinkers cling to the original plan and resist change. Flexible thinkers adjust without self-judgment. This flexibility reveals humility. Humility accepts that you do not know everything yet. Mistakes test humility directly. Those who pass the test grow faster. Those who resist remain stuck, repeating the same patterns. The mistake is the mirror. Adaptability is the response. Mistakes also reveal what you value most. Philosophy teaches that values show themselves under stress. When something goes wrong, priorities become clear. Do you value learning or being right? Growth or comfort? Integrity or approval? Mistakes strip away abstraction and force action. In how you respond, your values speak louder than words. This is why mistakes are more honest than success. Success allows illusion. Mistakes demand truth. Mistakes reveal how you handle uncertainty. Philosophy teaches that uncertainty is unavoidable. When a mistake disrupts certainty, some people rush to restore control at any cost. Others tolerate the unknown long enough to understand. This tolerance reveals emotional strength. Mistakes test whether you can remain grounded without immediate answers. Those who can stay present during uncertainty develop wisdom. Those who cannot seek shortcuts that often create new mistakes. The original error becomes a teacher ignored. Another truth revealed by mistakes is whether you see life as fixed or fluid. Philosophy distinguishes between fixed identity and evolving process. If you see yourself as fixed, mistakes feel threatening. If you see yourself as evolving, mistakes feel expected. This worldview shapes resilience. Mistakes reveal which lens you are using. One lens creates fear, the other creates momentum. The difference determines how far you go. Mistakes also reveal the depth of your patience. Philosophy teaches that impatience amplifies suffering. After a mistake, impatience demands immediate resolution. It pushes you to undo, escape, or rush forward. Patience allows integration. Integration turns experience into understanding. Mistakes reveal whether you allow lessons to settle or force premature closure. Wisdom requires time. Mistakes offer that time if you do not rush past it. Mistakes reveal how much you trust yourself. Philosophy teaches that self-trust grows through honest evaluation, not perfection. When you trust yourself, mistakes do not destroy confidence. They inform it. When self-trust is weak, mistakes confirm doubt. This difference is crucial. Mistakes expose whether your confidence is based on outcomes or on inner stability. Only the latter survives failure. Another truth mistakes reveal is your capacity for reflection. Philosophy values reflection as the bridge between experience and wisdom. Without reflection, mistakes repeat. With reflection, they transform. Mistakes show whether you pause to ask meaningful questions or move on unchanged. The quality of reflection determines the quality of growth. The mistake itself is only the beginning. Mistakes also reveal how you relate to effort. Philosophy teaches that effort without awareness leads to exhaustion. When something fails, do you blindly push harder or step back to reassess? This response reveals maturity. Mature effort adjusts direction, not just intensity. Mistakes invite reassessment. Ignoring this invitation leads to burnout. Accepting it leads to refinement. Finally, mistakes reveal who you are becoming. Philosophy teaches that identity is shaped through response, not intention. Each mistake offers a moment of choice. You can shrink or expand. You can deny or learn. Over time, these choices accumulate into character. Mistakes are not interruptions to your path. They are the places where your true direction is decided. Chapter 4. Why avoiding failure keeps you weak. Avoiding failure keeps you weak because it trains the mind to fear learning. Philosophy teaches that strength is built through engagement with reality, not escape from it. When you avoid failure, you avoid situations where feedback exists. Feedback is how growth happens. Without it, skills remain shallow and confidence fragile. You may feel safe, but that safety is artificial. It is built on limitation rather than capability. The mind becomes cautious, calculating, and overly protective. Over time, this protection turns into paralysis. You stop stretching. You stop risking, and without risk, there is no expansion. Weakness is not the presence of failure, it is the absence of challenge. Avoidance feels comfortable in the short term, but it quietly shrinks your world. Avoiding failure also keeps you weak because it strengthens fear instead of courage. Philosophy explains that fear grows when obeyed. Each time you step away from a challenge to avoid failing, fear receives confirmation. It learns that it is in control. The next challenge feels larger, the next risk feels heavier. Over time, fear becomes the decision-maker. Courage, unused, atrophies. This is how people slowly lose confidence without realizing it. They believe they are being careful, but they are actually being conditioned. Weakness forms not from failing, but from repeatedly choosing safety over growth. Strength requires facing discomfort willingly. Avoidance removes that opportunity. Another reason avoidance weakens you is that it prevents skill development. Philosophy teaches that mastery requires error. No skill improves in a vacuum. Every refinement comes from noticing what didn't work. When you avoid failure, you avoid this refinement process. You remain stuck at beginner levels while pretending to be stable. This stability is deceptive. It collapses under pressure because it was never tested. True strength is resilient because it has been shaped by mistakes. Avoidance creates brittle confidence that breaks easily when challenged. Avoiding failure also keeps you weak because it disconnects you from reality. Philosophy warns that illusion feels safe but collapses eventually. When you avoid situations where you might fail, you create a false sense of competence. You don't know what you can handle because you've never tested yourself. This uncertainty creates anxiety. Anxiety drains energy. You become cautious not because you are wise, but because you are unsure. Strength grows from knowing your limits through experience, not guessing them from the sidelines. Avoidance keeps you guessing. Guessing keeps you small. Another way avoidance weakens you is by eroding self-trust. Philosophy teaches that self-trust grows when you face outcomes honestly. When you avoid failure, you avoid proving to yourself that you can survive discomfort. Each avoided challenge sends a message. I can't handle this. Over time, this message becomes belief. Belief shapes identity. You start seeing yourself as fragile. Fragility invites further avoidance. The cycle reinforces itself. Strength requires evidence of resilience. That evidence only comes from lived experience, not imagined success. Avoiding failure also limits emotional strength. Philosophy teaches that emotions grow through exposure, not avoidance. When you avoid failure, you avoid disappointment, embarrassment, and frustration. These emotions remain unpracticed. When they eventually appear, they feel overwhelming. You lack emotional resilience because it was never trained. Strength is not the absence of emotion. It is the ability to move through emotion without collapsing. Avoidance delays this learning, making emotions feel more dangerous than they are. Another consequence of avoidance is stagnation of character. Philosophy teaches that character forms under pressure. When you avoid failure, you avoid pressure. Without pressure, character remains undeveloped. Traits like patience, humility, and perseverance only emerge when tested. Avoidance keeps these traits dormant. You may believe you are calm or disciplined, but without challenge, those qualities are unproven. Strength is proven capacity. Avoidance prevents proof. Avoiding failure also weakens adaptability. Philosophy values adaptability as intelligence in action. When you avoid failure, you avoid adjusting to changing conditions. You cling to what feels predictable. Predictability feels safe, but limits growth. Life eventually changes regardless. When it does, those who avoided failure struggle to adapt. Those who faced failure earlier adjust faster. Strength is the ability to respond, not control. Avoidance teaches control. Failure teaches response. Another reason avoidance keeps you weak is that it reinforces perfectionism. Philosophy warns that perfectionism hides fear behind high standards. When you avoid failure, you wait until conditions feel perfect. Perfect conditions rarely arrive. Life moves on without you. You remain stuck preparing while others progress imperfectly. Strength is built through imperfect action. Avoidance delays action indefinitely. Delay erodes confidence. Confidence is built by doing, not waiting. Avoiding failure also keeps you weak because it narrows identity. Philosophy teaches that identity expands through experience. When you avoid failure, you limit experiences. Your identity becomes rigid and fragile. Any threat feels destabilizing because the self has not been tested. A tested self is flexible. Flexibility is strength. Avoidance creates rigidity. Rigidity breaks under stress. Another cost of avoidance is lost perspective. Philosophy teaches that failure provides context. It shows you what matters and what doesn't. When you avoid failure, you overvalue outcomes and undervalue process. This imbalance creates anxiety. Anxiety weakens focus. Focus is essential for strength. Failure recalibrates priorities. Avoidance preserves distortion. Avoiding failure also prevents humility. Philosophy teaches that humility grounds strength. Without humility, confidence becomes arrogance or fear. Failure humbles gently when accepted. Avoidance protects the ego, but weakens the foundation. Ego-based strength collapses easily. Humble strength endures. Another way avoidance weakens you is by fostering dependence on external validation. Philosophy notes that when you avoid failure, you seek approval instead of growth. Approval is unreliable. Growth is internal. Strength depends on internal metrics. Avoidance shifts attention outward. Outward focus weakens inner authority. Inner authority is strength. Avoiding failure also disconnects you from meaning. Philosophy teaches that meaning arises from struggle. When life is too safe, it feels empty. Avoidance removes struggle, but also removes depth. Shallow comfort replaces meaningful challenge. Strength is forged in meaningful effort. Avoidance trades meaning for ease. Finally, avoiding failure keeps you weak because it delays transformation. Philosophy teaches that transformation requires friction. Failure provides that friction. Without it, change remains theoretical. Strength is not an idea. It is an embodied state earned through experience. Avoidance postpones that earning. Facing failure accelerates growth. Avoiding it only extends weakness. Chapter 5. The lessons success can never teach. Success can never teach you humility the way failure does. Philosophy teaches that success often confirms what you already believe about yourself, while failure challenges it. When things go well, the ego quietly takes credit. You assume your methods are correct, your instincts flawless, your path secure. Success reinforces certainty. Failure disrupts it. In that disruption, humility is born. Humility is not self-doubt, it is openness to learning. Success rarely invites this openness because it rewards existing behavior. Failure forces you to question. It asks you to look again, deeper and more honestly. This questioning refines character in a way success never demands. Without failure, humility remains theoretical. With failure, it becomes lived wisdom. Success also cannot teach resilience the way loss can. Philosophy teaches that resilience is not proven in comfort, but in recovery. When you succeed repeatedly, you do not learn how to rebuild. You learn how to maintain. Maintenance requires skill, but rebuilding requires strength of spirit. Failure breaks structure. It tests whether you can stand without the scaffolding of achievement. The process of rising after a fall trains endurance, patience, and adaptability. Success rarely interrupts you enough to teach these traits. Failure does. It demands that you find footing in uncertainty. That is where real resilience forms. Another lesson success can never teach is discernment. Philosophy values discernment as the ability to distinguish what truly matters. Success often distracts with noise, praise, attention, reward. These can blur priorities. Failure strips noise away. It removes what is unnecessary and exposes what is essential. When things collapse, you see clearly what you relied on and what you ignored. This clarity is uncomfortable but invaluable. Success rarely forces you to simplify. Failure does. Simplification sharpens judgment. Judgment strengthens decision-making. This clarity becomes a quiet advantage. Success alone cannot provide. Success also cannot teach self-trust in the same way failure does. Philosophy teaches that self-trust grows when you survive your worst fears. Success confirms ability, but failure confirms survivability. You learn that even when things go wrong, you remain intact. This realization builds deep confidence. Confidence rooted in survival is steadier than confidence rooted in outcomes. Success-based confidence is fragile because it depends on repetition. Failure-based confidence endures because it has faced loss and remained standing. That endurance becomes inner authority. Another lesson success cannot teach is emotional regulation. Philosophy teaches that calm under pressure is learned through pressure. Success often reduces pressure. Failure amplifies it. When failure arrives, emotions surge: disappointment, fear, shame. Learning to navigate these emotions without self-destruction builds emotional intelligence. Success rarely triggers this level of intensity. Without intensity, emotional skill remains underdeveloped. Failure trains the nervous system to stay present during discomfort. This training becomes invaluable in leadership, relationships, and life. Calm learned through hardship is real calm. Success also cannot teach honesty the way failure does. Philosophy notes that success allows denial. You can ignore flaws when results are positive. Failure removes that option. It forces honesty about preparation, effort, strategy, and assumptions. This honesty can sting, but it cleans perception. Clean perception leads to better choices. Success often delays this reckoning. Failure accelerates it. Growth depends on truth, not comfort. Failure delivers truth without negotiation. Another lesson success cannot teach is empathy. Philosophy teaches that empathy grows from shared vulnerability. Success separates, failure connects. When you fail, you understand struggle firsthand. This understanding deepens compassion for others. Compassion built on experience is authentic, not performative. Success can make empathy abstract. Failure makes it real. Real empathy strengthens relationships and leadership. It allows you to meet others without judgment. Success alone rarely fosters this depth of connection. Success also cannot teach patience the way failure does. Philosophy teaches that patience is forged in waiting. Success rewards quickly, failure delays. Delays force you to sit with uncertainty. In that waiting, patience develops. Patience refines perspective. It tempers impulsiveness. It allows wisdom to mature. Success often shortcuts this process. Failure insists on it. The patience learned through delay strengthens long-term vision. Another lesson success cannot teach is adaptability. Philosophy values adaptability as survival intelligence. Success encourages repetition. You do what worked before. Failure forces innovation. When old methods collapse, you must adjust. This adjustment builds flexibility of mind. Flexible minds navigate change better than rigid ones. Success can create rigidity. Failure breaks it. Adaptability learned through failure becomes a lifelong asset. Success also cannot teach boundaries. Philosophy teaches that limits define strength. When things are going well, you may overextend without consequence. Failure reveals where limits were ignored. It teaches you when to stop, rest, or redirect. These lessons protect energy and focus. Success rarely enforces limits. Failure does, decisively. Respecting limits builds sustainable strength. Another lesson success cannot teach is gratitude. Philosophy teaches that appreciation deepens when things are lost and regained. Success can breed entitlement. Failure restores perspective. You begin to value progress, support, and opportunity more deeply. Gratitude grounded in loss is sincere. It stabilizes the heart. Success-based gratitude is often fleeting. Failure-based gratitude endures. Success also cannot teach courage in the same way failure does. Philosophy teaches that courage is acting despite fear. Success reduces fear. Failure amplifies it. Choosing to continue after failure requires real courage. This courage strengthens identity. You see yourself as someone who persists. That self-image fuels future action. Success alone rarely tests this depth of courage. Another lesson success cannot teach is detachment. Philosophy teaches that clinging causes suffering. Success encourages clinging to status, results, and recognition. Failure loosens attachment by force. When you lose what you clung to, you learn impermanence. This lesson frees you. Detachment allows clarity. Clarity improves judgment. Success rarely teaches impermanence. Failure does, unmistakably. Success also cannot teach perspective. Philosophy teaches that perspective comes from contrast. Without contrast, you cannot see clearly. Failure provides contrast. It shows you life beyond winning. It teaches you who you are without applause. That knowledge is grounding. It prevents arrogance and despair alike. Success alone cannot provide this balance. Finally, success can never teach transformation the way failure does. Philosophy teaches that transformation requires disruption. Success preserves. Failure disrupts. In disruption, old identities dissolve. New understanding forms. This transformation reshapes character, not just outcomes. Failure teaches lessons. Chapter 6. Turning Pain into Wisdom. Turning pain into wisdom begins with stopping the fight against pain itself. Philosophy teaches that pain resists transformation when it is treated as an enemy. Most people want pain to disappear immediately. They distract themselves, numb it, or rush past it. But pain that is avoided does not dissolve, it embeds. Wisdom begins the moment you stop asking, "How do I escape this?" and start asking, "What is this showing me?" Pain carries information that comfort never delivers. It reveals limits, attachments, illusions, and unmet needs. When you allow pain to exist without judgment, it softens enough to speak. Listening does not mean surrendering to suffering. It means extracting meaning before suffering turns into bitterness. Pain becomes wisdom when it is observed rather than dramatized. Philosophy warns that the mind amplifies pain through story. The event hurts, but the interpretation hurts more. When you replay what happened and attach conclusions about your worth or future, pain multiplies. Wisdom requires separating sensation from narrative. The sensation passes, the narrative lingers. By questioning the story instead of the pain, you prevent emotional inflation. You begin seeing pain as a moment, not an identity. This shift reduces suffering and opens space for insight. Insight is impossible when pain is exaggerated. Calm observation transforms raw experience into understanding. Another step in turning pain into wisdom is patience. Philosophy teaches that insight unfolds slowly. Pain demands immediate resolution, but wisdom requires time. When you rush meaning, you often settle for false lessons. You may blame yourself excessively or blame others completely. Both shortcuts prevent growth. Allowing time lets emotions settle so clarity can emerge. With distance, patterns become visible. You see how choices, timing, or assumptions contributed. This clarity is gentle but precise. Wisdom arrives when urgency leaves. Pain processed patiently becomes guidance instead of weight. Pain also turns into wisdom when responsibility replaces blame. Philosophy distinguishes responsibility as empowerment and blame as paralysis. Blame keeps you stuck in anger or shame. Responsibility asks what can be learned. This question shifts focus from punishment to progress. Pain handled with responsibility sharpens judgment. It teaches you where boundaries were weak, awareness was limited, or preparation was lacking. These lessons strengthen future decisions. Blame teaches nothing. Responsibility teaches everything. Choosing responsibility transforms pain into a teacher rather than a wound. Another way pain becomes wisdom is through humility. Philosophy teaches that humility opens the mind. Pain humbles by breaking illusions of control. This breaking feels harsh at first. But once resistance fades, humility creates openness. You become willing to learn what you previously ignored. You listen more closely, you assume less. Wisdom grows in this openness. Without humility, pain hardens into defensiveness. Defensiveness blocks insight. Accepting humility allows pain to refine character rather than embitter it. Pain also reveals values when examined honestly. Philosophy teaches that suffering shows what matters. You do not feel pain over what you do not care about. The depth of pain reflects the depth of meaning. When you recognize this, pain becomes a compass. It points toward what needs attention, protection, or change. Wisdom emerges when you follow this signal instead of silencing it. Pain clarifies priorities. It strips away distractions. What remains is essential. Learning to read pain this way turns it into guidance rather than punishment. Turning pain into wisdom also requires self-compassion. Philosophy emphasizes that harshness blocks learning. When you attack yourself for feeling pain, you add another layer of suffering. Self-compassion creates safety. Safety allows honesty. Honest reflection leads to insight. Compassion does not excuse mistakes. It creates the conditions to learn from them. Without compassion, pain becomes trauma. With compassion, pain becomes growth. The tone you use with yourself determines the outcome. Pain becomes wisdom when it is integrated, not suppressed. Philosophy teaches that unintegrated pain repeats itself. When lessons are ignored, patterns return. Integration means understanding what changed you and how. It means allowing pain to influence future behavior. This influence is not fear-based. It is informed. Wisdom shows itself in changed choices. When pain leads to adjustment, it has fulfilled its purpose. When it does not, it lingers unresolved. Another transformation occurs when pain is shared wisely. Philosophy notes that reflection deepens through articulation. Speaking or writing about pain clarifies meaning. Silence can protect temporarily, but expression organizes experience. Wisdom grows when pain is named accurately. This naming removes confusion. Confusion keeps pain alive. Clear language turns pain into knowledge. Knowledge strengthens resilience. Pain also becomes wisdom when comparison is avoided. Philosophy warns that comparing pain invalidates insight. Your pain does not need to be worse than someone else's to matter. Minimizing pain delays learning. Honoring pain without exaggeration allows honest examination. Wisdom requires sincerity. Sincerity allows depth. Depth produces lasting understanding. Another essential step is forgiveness. Philosophy teaches that resentment traps pain in the past. Forgiveness releases attention. This does not mean approving harm. It means refusing to let pain dominate identity. Forgiveness creates space for insight. Without it, pain hardens. With it, pain softens into memory and meaning. Pain turns into wisdom when you stop identifying with it. Philosophy distinguishes experience from self. You experienced pain. You are not pain. This separation prevents fixation. Fixation freezes growth. When identity loosens, pain informs without controlling. Wisdom requires this distance. Distance allows perspective. Pain also teaches restraint. Philosophy shows that pain exposes impulsive habits. After pain, you learn where to pause. Pausing prevents repetition. This restraint is a form of intelligence. Intelligence shaped by pain is practical and grounded. It guides action quietly. Another lesson pain teaches is empathy. Philosophy teaches that suffering expands understanding. When pain is processed, it deepens compassion for others. This compassion is not sentimental, it is grounded in reality. Wisdom includes this expanded awareness. Awareness improves relationships and leadership. Finally, turning pain into wisdom means trusting the process. Philosophy teaches that pain's value is not immediate. It unfolds as you integrate it. When you stop demanding quick relief and allow meaning to emerge, pain completes its work. It leaves behind clarity, strength, and depth. That is wisdom earned, not borrowed. Chapter 7. Learning to reflect instead of regret. Learning to reflect instead of regret begins with understanding the nature of regret itself. Philosophy teaches that regret is pain without direction. It looks backward with judgment rather than forward with curiosity. When something goes wrong, regret immediately asks, "Why did I do that?" in a tone meant to punish, not to understand. Reflection asks the same question, but with a different intention. It asks to learn, not to condemn. This difference in intention changes everything. Regret traps you in the past, replaying scenes without resolution. Reflection uses the past as material for insight. One freezes you, the other moves you forward. Learning to reflect means replacing self-attack with self-inquiry. Inquiry creates space. Space allows wisdom to enter. Regret feels heavy because it assumes permanence. Philosophy explains that regret often carries the belief that damage is irreversible. The mind says, "I ruined everything." Reflection challenges this belief by introducing nuance. It recognizes that most outcomes are shaped by multiple factors, not a single moment. Reflection restores proportion. It sees mistakes as parts of a larger process rather than final verdicts. This proportional thinking reduces emotional intensity. When intensity decreases, clarity increases. Clarity is essential for growth. Regret thrives in emotional overwhelm. Reflection thrives in calm attention. Choosing reflection is choosing clarity over chaos. Another key difference is how regret and reflection treat responsibility. Philosophy distinguishes responsibility from self-punishment. Regret punishes. It says, "You should have known better." Reflection takes responsibility without cruelty. It asks, "What information was missing then?" This question opens learning. Learning transforms pain into preparation. Preparation strengthens future decisions. Regret offers no preparation. It only drains energy. Reflection restores power by converting experience into understanding. Power grows where learning is active. Regret also narrows perception. Philosophy teaches that intense emotion limits awareness. When regret dominates, you see only what went wrong. You ignore what you handled well, what you survived, and what you gained. Reflection widens perception. It examines context, effort, intention, and constraints. This balanced view prevents distortion. Distortion keeps pain alive. Balance allows integration. Integration is the process by which experience becomes wisdom. Without integration, regret repeats itself. With integration, growth occurs. Learning to reflect instead of regret also requires patience. Philosophy teaches that reflection cannot be rushed. Regret wants immediate emotional resolution. It demands relief through self-blame or self-forgiveness without understanding. Reflection takes time. It waits for emotions to settle so insight can surface. This waiting feels uncomfortable, but it is productive. Wisdom arrives when urgency fades. Reflection honors this timing. Regret ignores it. Patience turns pain into perspective. Regret often feeds on comparison. Philosophy warns that comparison intensifies suffering. After a mistake, regret measures your path against imagined alternatives. If only I had done what they did. These comparisons are fictional and unfair. Reflection avoids them. It focuses on your actual situation, not hypothetical versions. This realism grounds learning. Learning grounded in reality leads to actionable change. Regret based on fantasy leads nowhere. Reflection stays anchored. Another distinction lies in identity. Philosophy teaches that regret attacks identity, while reflection protects it. Regret says, "This mistake defines you." Reflection says, "This mistake informs you." Identity informed by experience grows stronger. Identity attacked by regret becomes fragile. Fragility increases fear of future mistakes. Reflection reduces fear by normalizing error as part of development. Normalization encourages engagement. Engagement fuels growth. Learning to reflect also means changing your inner language. Philosophy emphasizes the power of words. Regret uses absolute language. Always, never, ruined. Reflection uses precise language. Missed, misjudged, learned. Precision reduces drama. Drama feeds regret. Precision feeds insight. When language shifts, emotion follows. Emotional tone becomes calmer. Calm allows analysis. Analysis produces wisdom. Regret keeps attention stuck in the moment of failure. Philosophy teaches that fixation prolongs suffering. Reflection expands the timeline. It asks how this moment fits into the larger journey. This broader view reduces emotional weight. Weight lifts when meaning is restored. Reflection restores meaning by connecting experience to growth. Regret disconnects meaning by isolating the moment as catastrophic. Learning to reflect reweaves continuity into your life story. Another difference is agency. Philosophy teaches that reflection restores agency. Regret removes it. When you regret, you feel powerless, trapped by the past. When you reflect, you regain influence over the future. You identify adjustments, boundaries, or skills to develop. These insights empower action. Action dissolves helplessness. Helplessness fuels regret. Agency fuels reflection. Regret also thrives on shame. Philosophy distinguishes shame from accountability. Shame attacks the self. Accountability improves behavior. Reflection operates through accountability. It asks what can change without condemning who you are. This approach maintains self-respect. Self-respect supports growth. Regret erodes self-respect. Eroded self-respect weakens resilience. Reflection strengthens it. Learning to reflect instead of regret also involves emotional honesty. Philosophy teaches that reflection requires acknowledging pain without exaggeration. Suppressing pain leads to regret resurfacing later. Overindulging pain leads to rumination. Reflection holds pain gently, neither avoiding nor amplifying it. This balance allows processing. Processing completes the emotional cycle. Regret keeps it open. Reflection closes it thoughtfully. Another important shift is recognizing the cost of regret. Philosophy teaches that regret consumes energy needed for growth. It steals attention from the present. Reflection returns attention to now. Present-focused attention improves decision-making. Better decisions reduce future regret. The cycle breaks. Reflection is preventive wisdom. Regret is reactive suffering. Reflection also deepens self-trust. Philosophy teaches that self-trust grows when you respond to mistakes constructively. When you reflect, you prove to yourself that you can learn and adapt. This proof builds confidence. Confidence reduces fear of future errors. Fear reduction increases courage. Courage invites progress. Regret undermines this entire chain. Learning to reflect instead of regret requires forgiveness grounded in understanding. Philosophy teaches that forgiveness without reflection is premature. It bypasses learning. Reflection first clarifies what happened. Forgiveness then releases emotional charge. This sequence ensures growth is not skipped. Regret skips reflection and stalls forgiveness. Reflection completes both. Finally, reflection transforms the past into preparation. Philosophy teaches that nothing is wasted when understood. Regret wastes experience by turning it into self-punishment. Reflection redeems experience by turning it into insight. Insight strengthens character. Character shapes destiny. Learning to reflect is learning to grow deliberately. Chapter 8. How Failure Builds Mental Strength. Failure builds mental strength by forcing the mind to stay present under pressure. Philosophy teaches that strength is not developed in comfort, but in moments when certainty collapses. When failure occurs, the mind wants to escape, to distract, blame, or numb. But if you remain present, something changes. You discover that discomfort is survivable. This realization is foundational. Mental strength begins when fear loses its authority. Failure exposes fear directly and gives you a chance to face it without running. Each time you endure the discomfort without collapsing, the mind learns resilience. Resilience is not confidence in success, it is confidence in recovery. That confidence is unshakable because it is earned through experience, not hope. Failure also builds mental strength by expanding emotional tolerance. Philosophy teaches that the mind weakens when it avoids difficult emotions. Failure brings disappointment, embarrassment, and uncertainty all at once. When you allow these emotions without resisting them, your tolerance grows. What once felt overwhelming becomes manageable. This expanded capacity reduces reactivity. You stop panicking at the first sign of discomfort. Calm becomes accessible even in challenge. This emotional regulation is a core component of mental strength. Strength is not the absence of emotion, but the ability to move through emotion without being controlled by it. Another way failure strengthens the mind is by breaking dependence on outcomes. Philosophy emphasizes that attachment to outcomes creates fragility. When success defines your worth, failure feels devastating. But repeated failure teaches detachment. You learn that outcomes change, but your ability to act remains. This shift stabilizes identity. Identity rooted in effort rather than result is resilient. When results fluctuate, the self does not collapse. This inner stability is mental strength in its purest form. You stop tying your sense of value to external validation. Validation becomes optional, not essential. Failure also builds mental strength by sharpening self-awareness. Philosophy teaches that awareness grows when illusions break. Success can hide weaknesses. Failure exposes them. Exposure invites reflection. Reflection refines understanding. Through failure, you learn how you react under stress, where impatience arises, and where fear distorts judgment. This knowledge improves self-regulation. Self-regulation is strength because it allows intentional response rather than impulsive reaction. The mind becomes less chaotic and more directed. Direction replaces confusion. Strength replaces fragility. Mental strength also develops when failure forces problem-solving. Philosophy values adaptability as intelligence in action. When something fails, you must adjust. You analyze, test, and revise. This process strengthens cognitive flexibility. Rigid minds break under change. Flexible minds adapt. Failure trains flexibility by demanding it. Over time, the mind becomes comfortable with uncertainty. Comfort with uncertainty is rare and powerful. It allows you to move forward even without guarantees. This capacity defines mental toughness. Failure builds strength by dismantling perfectionism. Philosophy teaches that perfectionism is fear disguised as standards. Failure exposes the impossibility of flawlessness. When perfection collapses, freedom emerges. You realize progress does not require perfection. This realization reduces self-imposed pressure. Reduced pressure improves focus. Focus enhances performance. Mental strength grows when energy is no longer wasted on unrealistic expectations. Failure liberates effort from fear. Another aspect of strength failure builds is humility. Philosophy teaches that humility grounds intelligence. Failure humbles by reminding you that learning never ends. This humility opens the mind. Open minds learn faster. Closed minds resist feedback. Failure breaks arrogance and defensiveness. In their absence, curiosity emerges. Curiosity strengthens the mind by encouraging exploration rather than avoidance. Curiosity replaces fear. That replacement is transformative. Failure also strengthens mental endurance. Philosophy teaches that endurance develops through sustained effort, despite discouragement. Failure tests commitment. Do you continue when progress is slow or uncertain? Each time you persist after failure, endurance grows. This endurance is not dramatic. It is quiet and steady. It shows up as consistency. Consistency compounds. Mental strength accumulates through repeated acts of persistence, not single moments of courage. Another way failure builds strength is by reducing fear of judgment. Philosophy teaches that fear of judgment controls behavior. When you fail publicly or privately and survive, judgment loses power. You realize that others' opinions do not determine your survival. This realization frees mental energy. Freed energy can be directed toward learning and creation. Mental strength increases when attention is no longer consumed by imagined scrutiny. Failure also strengthens focus. Philosophy teaches that distraction often masks avoidance. After failure, priorities clarify. You stop wasting energy on what does not matter. Focus sharpens because necessity demands it. Sharp focus improves decision-making. Improved decisions strengthen confidence. Confidence rooted in clarity is durable. Failure removes noise. Silence follows. In that silence, focus grows. Mental strength also emerges through acceptance. Philosophy teaches that resistance drains energy. When you accept failure as part of growth, resistance drops. Energy once used to fight reality becomes available for adaptation. This energy shift increases efficiency. The mind becomes less exhausted. Less exhaustion means greater capacity. Capacity is strength. Failure strengthens mental boundaries. Philosophy teaches that boundaries protect attention. After failure, you learn what drains you unnecessarily. You become more selective with commitments, advice, and influences. This selectivity preserves mental resources. Preserved resources allow deeper work. Deep work strengthens mastery. Mastery strengthens confidence. Another benefit is resilience to uncertainty. Philosophy teaches that uncertainty is unavoidable. Failure introduces it forcefully. When you face uncertainty repeatedly, it becomes familiar. Familiarity reduces anxiety. Reduced anxiety improves performance. The mind no longer freezes when answers are unclear. This adaptability is a hallmark of mental strength. Failure also builds perspective. Philosophy teaches that perspective prevents despair. Through failure, you learn that one outcome does not define a life. This broader view stabilizes emotion. Stability allows consistent action. Consistent action produces results over time. Mental strength is sustained action despite fluctuation. Finally, failure builds mental strength by proving that you can rise. Philosophy teaches that belief is built through evidence. Each recovery after failure becomes evidence of capability. This evidence reshapes identity. You stop seeing yourself as fragile. You see yourself as resilient. That identity fuels future courage. And courage, practiced repeatedly, becomes strength. Chapter 9. Using your past mistakes as fuel. Using your past mistakes as fuel begins when you stop seeing them as stains on your story and start seeing them as stored energy. Philosophy teaches that nothing experienced is wasted unless it is ignored. Mistakes contain emotional intensity, frustration, disappointment, shame, determination. When left unexamined, this energy turns inward and becomes self-doubt. When understood, it becomes propulsion. The same emotion that once weakened you can strengthen you when redirected. Fuel is not created from comfort, it is extracted from friction. Your past mistakes hold friction in concentrated form. Learning to use that friction instead of fighting it is the first step toward forward motion. Mistakes become fuel when they sharpen clarity. Philosophy teaches that clarity often arrives through contrast. When something fails, you see clearly what does not work. This clarity saves time, energy, and illusion. Instead of guessing, you know. Knowledge gained through error is grounded and reliable. When you use this knowledge deliberately, your next actions become more precise. Precision increases effectiveness. Effectiveness builds confidence. Confidence fuels momentum. In this way, a past mistake quietly powers future success. What once felt like a setback becomes guidance. Another way mistakes become fuel is through emotional leverage. Philosophy explains that strong emotion amplifies motivation. Past mistakes often carry emotional charge. When processed consciously, this charge becomes drive. You remember how it felt to fall short, to disappoint yourself, to lose something meaningful. That memory can either paralyze or energize. When you choose growth, it energizes. You channel the emotion into discipline, focus, and persistence. Emotion aligned with intention becomes force. Force moves you forward. Mistakes also fuel growth by strengthening resolve. Philosophy teaches that resolve is born from decision, not desire. Desire fades, decision endures. After failure, you face a choice. Repeat patterns or change direction. Choosing change hardens resolve. Each time you act differently because of a past mistake, resolve deepens. This resolve fuels consistency. Consistency compounds. Compounding produces transformation. Mistakes initiate this chain when used intentionally. Past mistakes become fuel when they dissolve fear. Philosophy teaches that fear loses power when faced honestly. Once you have failed and survived, fear of failure weakens. You know the worst is not the end. This knowledge frees action. Action fuels progress. Progress fuels belief. Belief fuels courage. Courage fuels momentum. The mistake that once terrified you now clears the path forward. Mistakes also fuel humility. Philosophy teaches that humility grounds ambition. Without humility, ambition becomes reckless. Past mistakes remind you of limits, gaps, and blind spots. This awareness refines strategy. Refined strategy conserves energy. Conserved energy is fuel. You move smarter, not just harder. Mistakes turn raw effort into informed action. Another form of fuel comes from empathy. Philosophy teaches that lived experience deepens understanding. Mistakes make you more aware of struggle your own and others. This awareness improves leadership, communication, and connection. Strong relationships fuel long-term success. Empathy built from mistakes becomes social intelligence. Social intelligence opens doors. Effort alone cannot. Your mistakes quietly power your ability to navigate people and systems wisely. Mistakes also fuel creativity. Philosophy teaches that disruption breaks rigid thinking. When a plan fails, the mind is forced to explore alternatives. This exploration sparks innovation. Innovation fuels progress. Many breakthroughs are born from failed attempts reimagined. Mistakes loosen mental constraints. In that looseness, new ideas emerge. Using mistakes as creative input turns loss into invention. Past mistakes become fuel through pattern recognition. Philosophy values pattern awareness as wisdom. When you reflect on repeated errors, patterns surface. These patterns reveal habits, assumptions, and triggers. Recognizing them gives you leverage. Leverage multiplies effort. With leverage, small changes produce large results. Mistakes reveal where leverage exists. Using that leverage propels growth efficiently. Mistakes also fuel patience. Philosophy teaches that patience is forged through delay. When outcomes take longer due to mistakes, patience develops. Patience stabilizes action. Stable action prevents burnout. Sustainable pace fuels longevity. Longevity allows mastery. Mastery compounds impact. The mistake that slowed you down refined your endurance. Another source of fuel is accountability. Philosophy teaches that accountability sharpens commitment. When you own your mistakes without self-attack, responsibility strengthens. Strong responsibility fuels disciplined action. Discipline sustains effort when motivation fades. Mistakes clarify what must change. Clarity fuels disciplined execution. Mistakes also fuel identity transformation. Philosophy teaches that identity evolves through response, not intention. When you respond to mistakes with learning, identity shifts from fragile to resilient. This new identity fuels future risk-taking. Risk-taking expands capacity. Expanded capacity fuels growth. The mistake becomes a turning point in who you believe yourself to be. Past mistakes fuel focus. Philosophy teaches that failure strips distraction. After mistakes, priorities sharpen. You stop chasing what does not matter. Focused energy is powerful fuel. It accelerates progress. Progress restores confidence. Confidence sustains focus. The cycle builds itself. Mistakes also fuel gratitude. Philosophy teaches that loss clarifies value. After failure, you appreciate opportunities more deeply. Gratitude stabilizes emotion. Stable emotion improves judgment. Good judgment fuels success. Gratitude born from mistakes grounds ambition in reality. Another way mistakes become fuel is through storytelling. Philosophy teaches that meaning shapes motivation. When you reinterpret your mistakes as chapters of growth rather than proof of inadequacy, motivation returns. Narrative fuels persistence. Persistence fuels achievement. The story you tell determines how far the fuel carries you. Finally, using your past mistakes as fuel means trusting that nothing learned is lost. Philosophy teaches that wisdom accumulates quietly. Each mistake processed becomes stored strength. When pressure returns, that strength activates automatically. You move with confidence born from experience. The same moments that once drained you now power you forward. That is the alchemy of growth. Chapter 10. Becoming unstoppable through what broke you. Becoming unstoppable through what broke you begins when you stop seeing brokenness as damage and start seeing it as exposure. Philosophy teaches that breaking reveals structure. When something shatters, you finally see how it was held together. Pain exposes weak assumptions, false confidence, and borrowed identities that could never sustain pressure. What broke was not your essence. It was what could not carry the weight of who you are becoming. This realization changes everything. Instead of trying to return to who you were, you begin rebuilding with intention. Rebuilding creates strength that comfort never could. Comfort preserves fragility. Breaking initiates transformation. When you accept this, unstoppable momentum begins. What breaks you also strips away illusion. Philosophy teaches that illusion collapses under stress. Success can hide flaws, but failure reveals truth instantly. When everything falls apart, what remains is real. Real is workable, illusion is not. Becoming unstoppable requires working with reality, not fantasy. The pain of breaking clears the path. It removes distractions, ego narratives, and false safety. In the quiet aftermath, clarity emerges. Clarity fuels decisive action. Decisive action compounds strength. This is how breaking becomes fuel rather than damage. Being broken also teaches you endurance. Philosophy teaches that endurance is not built by avoiding collapse, but by surviving it. When you endure emotional, mental, or situational breakdown and continue living, your nervous system learns a powerful lesson. You can survive more than you thought. This lesson becomes internal certainty. Certainty replaces fear. Fearlessness does not mean absence of fear. It means fear no longer controls direction. Direction guided by experience is unstoppable. Once you have lived through collapse, intimidation loses power over you. What broke you also rebuilds your identity. Philosophy teaches that identity forged without struggle is fragile. When identity breaks, you are forced to redefine yourself beyond titles, roles, and outcomes. This redefinition is painful but liberating. You stop relying on external validation. You begin anchoring worth internally. Internal anchoring creates stability. Stability makes you difficult to shake. People who are internally anchored are unstoppable because they do not crumble when circumstances change. Breaking also teaches discipline. Philosophy teaches that discipline emerges when desire is clarified by loss. After breaking, distractions lose appeal. You know what it costs to drift. Focus sharpens. You stop wasting energy. Disciplined action replaces impulsive behavior. Discipline compounds daily. Compounding creates momentum. Momentum becomes inevitability. This is how brokenness refines effort into precision. What broke you strengthens your emotional intelligence. Philosophy teaches that pain deepens awareness. When you have been broken, you recognize subtle emotional shifts in yourself and others. This awareness improves judgment, timing, and response. Emotional intelligence is power because it prevents unnecessary conflict and wasted energy. You move strategically rather than reactively. Strategy outlasts force. This strategic calm is unstoppable. Breaking also teaches humility, which paradoxically increases strength. Philosophy teaches that humility opens learning. After being broken, arrogance fades. You listen more. You observe more. You learn faster. Learning accelerates growth. Growth increases capability. Capability builds confidence grounded in reality. This confidence does not collapse under pressure because it is not inflated. It is earned. Earned confidence is unstoppable. What broke you also removes fear of failure. Philosophy teaches that fear survives only while the unknown remains untested. Once you have failed deeply, fear loses mystery. You know what failure feels like, and you know it does not end you. This knowledge liberates action. You take risks without panic. Risk-taking expands capacity. Expanded capacity increases opportunity. Opportunity multiplies growth. Fearless action rooted in experience creates unstoppable movement. Breaking refines resilience into strength. Philosophy teaches that resilience is not resistance to pain, but adaptability within it. When broken, you learn how to adjust rather than collapse. Adjustment is intelligence. Intelligence applied consistently becomes mastery. Mastery creates leverage. Leverage amplifies effort. Amplified effort produces disproportionate results. This leverage is what makes people appear unstoppable from the outside, though it was forged through pain. What broke you also sharpens values. Philosophy teaches that values clarify under loss. When everything falls away, you see what truly matters. This clarity guides decisions with precision. Decisions aligned with values reduce inner conflict. Reduced conflict conserves energy. Conserved energy sustains effort. Sustained effort outlasts opposition. This alignment fuels unstoppable consistency. Breaking also teaches boundaries. Philosophy teaches that limits protect strength. After breaking, you recognize where you overextended, trusted blindly, or ignored warning signs. You adjust. Boundaries strengthen structure. Strong structure carries weight. Weight gives presence. Presence commands respect. Respect stabilizes influence. Influence increases effectiveness. This structural strength prevents future collapse. What broke you also deepens compassion without weakening resolve. Philosophy teaches that compassion informed by pain is grounded, not sentimental. You understand struggle, but you no longer rescue blindly. You support without self-erasure. This balanced compassion preserves strength. Preserved strength allows sustained contribution. Sustained contribution compounds impact. This balance is rare and powerful. Breaking also transforms your relationship with time. Philosophy teaches that urgency dissolves after collapse. You stop rushing for validation. You build patiently. Patience refines strategy. Strategy outlasts impulse. Long-term thinking creates advantage. Advantage compounds quietly. Quiet advantage is unstoppable because it does not announce itself prematurely. What broke you becomes proof. Philosophy teaches that belief grows from evidence. Each time you rise after breaking, evidence accumulates. This evidence reshapes identity. You stop questioning your resilience. Certainty replaces doubt. Certainty directs action without hesitation. Hesitation is the enemy of momentum. Momentum sustained becomes unstoppable force. Finally, becoming unstoppable through what broke you means honoring the transformation instead of resenting it. Philosophy teaches that resentment chains you to the past. Acceptance frees energy for creation. When you accept breaking as part of your becoming, power returns fully. You move forward without fear, without illusion, and without apology. Nothing can stop someone who has already been broken and rebuilt with truth. In the end, failure is not something to escape, it is something to understand. Every setback you faced carried a lesson meant to prepare you for the next level of your life. When you stop treating failure as proof that you are not enough and start seeing it as feedback, everything changes. Growth is built through reflection, not regret. The strongest people are not those who never fall, but those who rise with clearer vision each time they do. Failure strips away illusion, strengthens discipline, and teaches humility lessons success alone can never offer. So don't run from your mistakes. Study them, learn from them, use them. Because once you extract the lesson, failure loses its power to hurt you and becomes the force that quietly builds the person you were always meant to become.